Hello boys and girls, we meet again. I just want to make this cinematic, dramatic look for fun, changing my environment. So I want to talk about making music with different DAWs. It's kind of like still music production video, but I want to show you my new stuff that I've been working on, mostly for fun, like what I do all the time. When I was like a kid, I tried to force myself, not that I forced myself, but I always had this mentality, how do I experience different kinds of life within my one life that I have right now, that I'm aware of, you know? And I was like pushing myself to do many things in different areas, in different ways, just so I would know what it's like, you know, to experience this and that. And in my life, you know, I've tried to do many different things until I finally settled into something that I'm really comfortable with and I'm actually enjoying it. In music world, I try to, once I got comfortable making music a certain way, I try to use different programs, different production, you know, techniques, different workflows, just to get a different outcome. And I knew what it's like making music this way or that way, so I eventually knew like how to get to certain results by implementing different, you know, programs, techniques and stuff. So my go-to DAW, once I start using computers, my go-to DAW was Cubase VST32. I think that's just how it was called. It was the very first Cubase version after transitioning from like Atari to PC platform, and I've used it for as long as I could until, you know, 64-bit technologies start to show up and new plugins that had like 64 bits and the VST3 that my original Cubase, it was only working at 32 bits, so it didn't like support the newer versions of the plugins that were coming out. I didn't like any of the new Cubase and I skipped Ableton straight away. I didn't like how it looked. I didn't like understand how to make music with it. I only used Ableton like 20 years ago for my live shows, which was mostly just playing clips of samples and pre-made tracks and mixing that on the various MIDI controllers during my live sets. But other than that, I probably tried Ableton just a couple of times to try and make full tracks, and I never liked it. It felt weird to me because I was used to the different kind of workflow and stuff. And so I've used Reason for many years as well, but Reason because it had the familiar you know, sequencer that was also very similar to the Cubase one. But I never really liked Reason that much. I've only used it out of convenience, but I like never loved it, and now I finished all my projects in Reason, and I don't even want to open up Reason anymore. But I eventually thought, you know, let's give Ableton a try. Why not? So I finally decided to stick around with Ableton for a little longer and try and make more music with it. As I said, different software influences me, or generally gives you different workflow, which in turn gives you totally different results. And while I mostly make jungle with Cubase and stuff, I can't really make jungle with Ableton because it makes me want to make music in a very different way. Do you know what I mean? When I use Cubase, I still use Cubase for like MIDI sequencing on my hardware, and I'm just very into MIDI when I make jungle because that's just all you have, and you work with analog gear that's based on MIDI regulations. And I found Ableton is really good working with audio, with samples, but it's very horrible work when you use its MIDI compatibility. I mean, MIDI is fine when you're playing, you know, simple stuff, but when you want to make like complex drum patterns like I do with Cubase, Ableton just doesn't like give you that. Or you can do that in Ableton, but it takes you like 10 times longer to do this. So I've actually just realized you can do a lot more with the MIDI that I just spoke about. And my bad, I know you have probably corrected me on that, but I just tried to do some stuff and I'm like, oh, you can actually do a lot more than I just talked about. So my bad. Ableton is really good. Okay, back to the video. In turn, like I just started experimenting with like totally different music. Like it's not jungle, and I want to share that music with you today. The way I work with Ableton, for now I'm only using Ableton Lite, which is original version that I got from buying some of the hardware like sound cards and stuff. So it only has like it's very limited program. It only has 8 tracks in total, which is fine, which is what I'm used to anyway. And I actually had fun making those little kind of beats, like 1 minute, 2 minute beats that I don't know what to do with it so far, but I really like them and I'm gonna play them to you later in this video. Just I'm wondering what's your opinion on that, and even though if you don't like it, I'm liking it a lot. So the way I make music in Ableton, I mostly just use audio, as I said. Sometimes I use VSTs and play like simple melodies, but I'm heavy into sound for this kind of like stuff. I'm really heavy into sampling, which was not the case for most of my life. I was actually avoiding sampling as much as I could, because my mentality was, when I was young, like 20, 25, 30 years ago, was I can play instruments myself, especially like piano and stuff, so I'd rather play my own melodies and music and avoid sampling at any cost. These days I don't mind sampling, especially some sort of like more obscure records, because sampling old stuff from records and stuff will not only give you some sort of melodic elements, but also give you textural elements, different textures. You know, soft scenes, they always sound like, you know, computer sounds, and you have to put a lot of extra processing to make them sound a little more dirty and stuff, which still kind of end up sounding like digital. But sampling like 60s, 70s sort of like experimental recordings of vinyl, it gives you that totally different character. Obviously you can record your samples, your like MIDI played stuff to some sort of like cassette tape and then sampling that back into the Ableton, because I know most of you are using Ableton, so we can relate on that. Running your digitally created sounds through tapes or other analog gear back to computer might actually give you that effect that, you know, you might be looking for. The way I make music with Ableton though is I just play with like little tricks and stuff. I do all the mix downs inside of I tried a couple of ways. I tried mixing my stuff, sending stuff from Ableton to the mixing desk, but I found that a bit more, you can actually be more flexible doing things straight into Ableton using some plugins. Like my favorite plugins are UAD plugins. I use some channel strips, I use some reverbs and stuff made by UAD. Thanks God, UAD made their plugins native, because like 10 years ago and stuff, I was very hesitant to buy their hardware. You know, you had to buy hardware, their hardware, the processing hardware, just to be able to use their plugins. And most of that was based around Apple production. I now own Apple, and now I don't even want to go with Apple computers. So now, since UAD is available natively, it's such a cool thing to actually experience. I find I can get those UAD plugins in I can finally use UAD plugins legally and stuff, you know. So I like to mix things in Ableton, but for the final touches, I actually run the clean mixdown into my Behringer analog compressor. I add this kind of compression, and then for the final mixdown, it goes through compression into cassette tape, and then it goes back to computers for digital distribution. So I like making things. So I'm just checking how much time I left on the camera. So I generally like this kind of workflow, because I can still capture the sound of analog tape and stuff, and it probably wouldn't be the best idea to do that with some more like dance music, DJ-oriented dance music, because cassettes, they run at such a slow speed, because cassettes are run at such a slow speed, and if you play that back, the track back, there's a bit of a fluctuation in tempo. The track doesn't like go straight from like start to finish at the same tempo. It has a bit of those waves. You can't hear it, but if you're out to beat match in the DJ set, your tracks wouldn't really beat match because you have this kind of sound, you know, fluctuating, which I like for non like drum and bass, non DJ related stuff. It kind of gives you that even more organic feel to it, you know. And the reason I run it through the Behringer compressor, I just found that no other compressor, no other plugin can give me that extra snap, you know, than the outboard stuff. And enough of me talking, I really did this really quick. I'm just gonna play you some tracks. They're not gonna be full tracks, but just to get you the taste of what I'm working on when I'm trying out new things. And I hope you're gonna like it, and always leave a comment, and I'll try and make more videos like that. For now, see you.